Greetings, welcome to Facts About Everything. I'm your host, James Egan. People have asked me to do a video about Hitler for a long time, but I thought I don't want to do a video about Hitler because, everyone knows everything about Hitler. I didn't want to do it until I could get some facts that are not as well known. So what can I say about Hitler that hasn't been said a million times? Well, Hitler might have indirectly led to the creation of GIFs. You know those loopy clips online? Yeah, Hitler might have indirectly inspired that. You see, on June 21st, 1940, Adolf Hitler attended a ceremony where he accepted France's surrender. Hitler demanded that the ceremony took place in the train car where the 1918 armistice was signed. This signing officially ended World War I, which devastated Germany. This was Hitler's way of getting back at anyone who tried to weaken the German people. Hitler saw the ceremony as a triumph and was exhilarated that there was going to be cameras capturing this momentous occasion. But then something very strange happened. During the signing, Hitler took a long step backwards. Although that sounds harmless, a filmmaker called John Grierson looped Hitler taking this step so it looked like he was doing a jig. This clip was showed at cinemas during the worst time of World War II solely to mock Hitler and his regime. So Hitler, not a great guy, but at least he gave us GIFs. And that is the first fact about Adolf Hitler. Let's dive in. Adolf Hitler was born in Braunau am Inn in Austria-Hungary. Nintendo formed the same year Hitler was born. Anyway, he was the fourth of 6 children. Gustav, Ida, Edmund, and Otto died as children. His sister, Paula, was the only sibling to live to adulthood. When Hitler was a boy, his family struggled with money. Thankfully, Hitler's doctor, Eduard Bloch, charged them nothing when they required his services. Hitler made sure that Bloch was protected during the Holocaust. Bloch was a Jew. Edward Bloch said that he never saw a human being more broken-hearted from the death of a parent than Hitler was when his mom, Clara, died. Hitler carried a picture of his mother until his dying day. When Hitler's mother was pregnant with him, she wanted to have an abortion, but her father convinced her to keep it. Hold on, there's a plane going over. I'm trying to talk about Hitler! Hitler's father beat him so badly, he fell into a coma for several days. Hitler vented his rage by beating his sister. Hitler was saved from drowning by a priest when he was 4 years old. For years, he dreamed of becoming a priest. Hitler wanted to be a painter, but was rejected from the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna twice. He lived in a homeless shelter after he was rejected from the art school and sold postcards with his artwork to survive. The name Adolf means noble wolf. Hitler means small holder. As a teenager, he was obsessed with a Jewish girl called Stefanie Isaac. Allegedly, he stalked her and fantasized about having a suicide pact with her. He suffered bad breath, gum disease, abscesses, and hepatitis. Also, some historians believe Hitler suffered from Parkinson's disease. He had polyps removed from his vocal cords twice. Yeah, that makes sense, because shouting like that all the time in his speeches has got to cause some damage. The Anophthalmus Hitleri is a blind beetle that was named after Hitler in 1933. Hitler's empire is known as the Third Reich. The First Reich was the Holy Roman Empire, and the Second Reich was formed in Bismarck. He refused to undress for medical examinations. He moved to Munich, Germany in 1913 to avoid being enlisted in the Austrian military. Ironically, he served in the German army for 4 years. The highest position he ever had in the army was corporal. Enraged that Germany lost World War I, he joined an anti-Semitic right-wing political organization called the German Workers' Party. Hitler was arrested in 1923 in the Beer Hall Putsch when the German Workers' Party attempted to overthrow the government. While imprisoned, he wrote his beliefs in the 1925 book Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. He wrote it by dictating his thoughts to Rudolf Hess and Emil Maurice, who typed it into a manuscript. The second volume was published the following years. Now, obviously, this is one of the most reviled books of all time, because it's obscenely racist and hateful. But is it good just as a book? No. Not even a little bit. It's terribly written and absurdly inaccurate. When Hitler was in power, Mein Kampf was given away for free to any newlywed couple in Germany. He believed Germany lost World War I because the German army was stabbed in the back by November criminals, which was an insult given to Marxists. He adored chocolate and ate up to 2 pounds of it per day. He didn't know how to drive. Hitler loved Wild West novels so much he forced his generals to read them. He was the first European leader to ban human zoos. Okay, if you're a Hitler expert, you know all this. So let's get to the really good stuff. So many of his troops suffer from syphilis, Hitler supplied them with blow-up sex dolls. They were designed to be small enough to fit in a troop's backpack. Hungarian actress Kathy von Nagy was asked to pose for the blow-up doll, but she refused. Wonder why. His military commander, Heinrich Himmler, believed Hitler was a messiah chosen by God to lead Germany to greatness. 20 people in Britain born after World War II have been named Adolf. His nephew, William Patrick Hitler, was a part of the US Navy and fought against his evil uncle. In 1939, the same year World War II began, he wrote an article called Why I Hate My Uncle. He was exposed to mustard gas during World War I, which made him go temporarily blind. Being exposed to the gas caused him to develop a raspy voice and a gastrointestinal disorder. Since Hitler suffered bad digestion, he tried vegetarianism, but still ate meat from time to time. So that misconception that Hitler was a vegetarian isn't true. When his friend Ernest Hans Stagel told Hitler his moustache was unfashionable, he said, "If it is not the fashion now, it will be because I wear it." He fought in the Battle of the Somme. He was released from combat after being shot in the thigh. Some historians believe he may have also been shot in the testicles, which forced one of them to be removed. This is possible since an autopsy on Hitler's body proved he only had one testicle. Visionary actor and director Orson Welles sat beside Hitler in a tavern, having no idea who he was at the time. The American Secret Service tried to spike Hitler's food with female hormones to make him more feminine. For over half a century, a skull supposedly belonging to Hitler was staged in the Russian State Archive in Moscow. However, an analysis performed on the skull in 2009 confirmed that the skull belonged to a woman. Hitler never visited a single concentration camp in his entire life. He received an Iron Cross for his services during World War I. The officer that recommended that Hitler should receive the award was Jewish. There are secret photos of Hitler practicing his poses for his speeches. His photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, took pictures and then Hitler picked his favorites. He made remarks like, "No, that looks silly, and I'm never doing that again." He ordered Hoffmann to destroy the photographs afterward. He didn't, because they were funny. Hitler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1939. Everybody knows that, but I had to include it. One of the most famous stories about Hitler is he refused to shake Jesse Owens' hand at the Olympics because he was black. So obviously Hitler envisioned a master race of white people, and then he watched a young African American called Jesse Owens win 4 medals at the Olympics. Hitler was meant to shake his hand, but he refused and stormed out of the stadium. It is true that Hitler didn't want to shake Jesse Owens' hand, but that's because he didn't want to shake anyone's hand except the German winners. The Olympic Committee said no, he had to either shake every winner's hand or none of the winners. Hitler thought it would be in Germany's best interest to shake nobody's hand. Ironically, Jesse Owens became friends with a German athlete called Luz Long and said he was treated with more respect at the Olympics than he was in his normal life before and after the games. Another misconception is that Hitler was a military and strategic mastermind. It is true Hitler was unquestionably charismatic, theatrical. Some argue that he was the greatest public speaker of all time. But a mastermind? Hitler wasn't even popular with the German people. He only received 30% of the vote when he ran for office. In the runoff, he got 37%. His opponent was Paul von Hindenburg. He received 53% of the vote, even though he was not interested in a second term. He only ran in the first place because he really didn't want Hitler in office. Also, Hitler couldn't control an army to save his life. He made every wrong decision you could possibly make. Germany could have had assault rifles earlier in the war, but Hitler rejected them. Also, Hitler had a no-retreat policy. If you're running into certain debt, running away isn't a sign of cowardice, it's common sense. Joseph Stalin couldn't control his army either. The difference is he knew that and left it to his generals. Hitler led the first public anti-smoking campaign in human history. An art critic was asked to review Hitler's paintings without being told who painted them. Although the critic thought the paintings were good, he pointed out that the style used for the human figures showed the artist had a profound disinterest in people. In 1944, a 16-year-old black student in Columbus, Ohio, won an essay contest on the theme "What to do with Hitler after the war" by submitting one sentence: put him in black skin and let him live the rest of his life in America. Hitler wanted to come across as single while he was in power. The German people did not know his partner, Eva Braun, existed until after World War II. He was in love with his own niece, Geli Raubal. When she died, Hitler admitted to Eva that he was infatuated with his niece. Eva was so heartbroken, she shot herself in the chest. She was saved by Hitler's doctor. Braun tried to take her life again in 1935 after she didn't hear from Hitler for 3 months. She wrote in her diary, "God, I'm afraid he won't answer today. I've decided on 35 pills, and it's going to really be a dead certain business. If only he would have somebody to call." Although Braun downed a bottle of pills, she survived. When Hitler learned what she'd done, he brought her flowers, begged for forgiveness, and bought her a house. Braun met Hitler for the first time in 1930. Although there was a 23-year-old gap, she was only 17, she fell in love with him almost instantly. Although she adored him, he cheated on her with at least 6 women. His most well-known affair was with the actress Renette Muller. In 1937, Muller committed suicide by jumping out of a window. Although Eva Braun is mostly known for being Hitler's wife, they were only married for 40 hours. Hitler had Braun's brother-in-law shot to death. In 1938, Hitler was Time magazine's Man of the Year. During the Holocaust, Adolf Hitler gave the UK and the US the opportunity to take in Jewish refugees, but they refused. He had a phobia of dentists and cats. He had at least 8 partners in his life. Every one of them, without exception, attempted suicide at least once. Although Hitler seems like the most evil person ever, there were a lot of people you'd be really surprised were on his side at the time. A group of Native Americans called the American Indian Federation were won over by Hitler's passionate speeches. One native, called Elwood Towner, wore swastikas on his clothes and condemned the Jews as children of Satan. To show his thanks, Hitler dubbed the Native Americans as Aryans and vowed to return the United States to Native Americans after Germany won World War II. However, this was an obvious lie, because Hitler's promise to crush the US was simply propaganda. He never intended to invade America, and he even said it was as fantastic as the invasion of the moon. Although Hitler was known as member 555 in the Nazi party, he was only the 55th member. The party started numbering its members at 500 to appear bigger than they were. Hitler? Lying? His favorite movie was King Kong. He absolutely loved Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He believed the Superman comics brainwashed its readers. On November 8, 1938, Hitler was supposed to make a speech at the Munich Beer Hall. However, he decided to leave half an hour early due to bad weather. About 8 minutes after Hitler left, a timed explosive behind his podium detonated, killing 8 people and injuring 60. The bomb was planted by a communist called Johann Georg Elser. Elser believed that the only thing stopping communism from expanding was Germany, so Elser believed Hitler must be killed. Elser met his end in a Dachau concentration camp. If Elser was successful, Hitler would have been killed before World War II ever began. In 1938, Hitler told the British foreign minister to shoot Gandhi, and if that doesn't suffice to reduce them to submission, shoot a dozen leading members of the Congress. If the Nazis took over Russia, they intended to deport 31 million Slavs to Siberia to work in forced labor camps. Within 30 years, intended to have wiped out most of Eastern Europe. He desired to collect thousands of Jewish artifacts and build the Museum of an Extinct Race when the war was over. Jewish actor Charlie Chaplin created a spoof about Hitler called The Great Dictator. Hitler watched the film with a group of friends twice. Some sources state that Hitler grew his iconic moustache to resemble Charlie Chaplin, but this is untrue. Although Hitler seemed like he wanted to conquer the world, he never had any desire to go to war with the Middle East. On the contrary, he said, "The Mohammedan religion would have been much more compatible to us than Christianity." If he won World War II, Hitler was going to make Italy a part of the Middle East. According to Joseph Goebbels, Hitler was deeply religious but entirely anti-Christian because Christianity was meek and flabby. Hey, you know the way Hitler was crazy? Yeah, Hitler intended to build a 1-mile tall mirror 22,300 miles above the earth and use it as a doomsday weapon. If Hitler was threatened by any nation, he would have the mirror tilted to reflect the sun's rays on that nation, incinerating it to dust. To ensure the mirror was always ready to be used, Hitler wanted astronauts inside a neighboring space station at all times to monitor it. I mean, I know you're Hitler, but that's even crazy by your standards. He was in power from 1934 to 1944. During this time, there were at least 26 attempts on his life. The first 10 attempts happened in his first year in power. Nearly all of these attempts were carried out by German citizens. There were 42 attempts on his life in total. During World War I, a British soldier had the opportunity to shoot Hitler, but he didn't because Hitler was wounded. The moral of the story is always shoot the wounded. His arm was left paralyzed after an assassination attempt in 1944. Adolf Hitler's underpants were sold at a recent auction for $7,000. They were described as clean and surprisingly large. Hitler was injected with a drug up to 20 times a day. Some of these drugs included meth, poisons, cocaine, daily caffeine injections, and heroin. He also used leeches and enemas. On top of that, he injected himself with bull serum to boost his testosterone. Before Hitler committed suicide, he gave his dog, Blondie, a cyanide pill to ensure it worked. When the dog died, Hitler wailed in grief. He didn't react when his wife took her life. Hitler was announced dead on May the 1st, the same day as Osama bin Laden. Before Hitler was in power, he saw a pamphlet called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which detailed how Jews secretly ruled the world. This pamphlet was a ridiculous hoax taken from a 19th century satirical extract. The extract was so blatantly unfounded that no rational person would take it seriously. In case you didn't know, Hitler wasn't exactly a rational person. Not only did Hitler believe this, it was this pamphlet that convinced him that Jews had to be eradicated. His abhorrence of Judaism stemmed from a pamphlet that Hitler didn't realize was supposed to be a joke. And finally, after Hitler committed suicide, the Nazis had to make peace with the Soviets. Russian General Vasily Chukov oversaw the negotiation and wanted to make sure he looked as intimidating as possible to the Nazis, so he pretended several war correspondents were part of his staff. However, these correspondents happened to be with the musician Matvey Blanter. Blanter was wearing a suit and so couldn't pass as a Soviet. Out of desperation, Chukov shoved Blanter into a closet moments before the Nazis entered the room. As the negotiation was coming to an end, Blanter passed out and fell out of the closet, terrifying the Nazis and humiliating the Soviets. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you like these facts, you can check them out in my book, 1000 Facts About Historic Figures, Volume 1, 2, or 3, or you can get it as one big book, 3000 Facts About Historic Figures. If there's any other historic figures you want me to do a video about, let me know and I'll upload it as soon as possible. To learn more facts, check out my books on Amazon. They're available on paperback and Kindle. Thanks for watching. See you again.